The first few seconds. That is often all it takes. Before we know someone's name, before we hear their story, before they even speak, our brain has already started forming a conclusion. This is one of the most powerful patterns in human psychology. The very first impression becomes a foundation for everything that follows. And the strange part is that first impression is not always accurate, but it is incredibly persuasive. It becomes a lens through which we interpret everything else. The mind does not wait for evidence. It does not wait for fairness. It rushes to meaning. It wants an answer immediately. Who is this person? Are they safe? Are they trustworthy? Are they someone I should move toward? Or someone I should avoid? Imagine meeting someone for the first time. They smile warmly. Their eyes soften. Their presence feels calm. Even before they speak, something in you relaxes. Even if they later make a mistake, you might excuse it. You might tell yourself, they're probably nervous. They didn't mean it. They're still a good person. But now imagine the opposite. Someone appears distant. Their tone feels cold. Their expression seems uninterested. Even if they later try to be friendly, you may still feel something is off. You might interpret their kindness as forced or their silence as arrogance. Because once the brain decides who someone is, it starts protecting that decision. This is how quickly perception becomes reality. Researchers have demonstrated this repeatedly. In one classic study, students were told they would meet a guest lecturer. Half the students were given a description that included one key impression. This person is warm, hardworking, thoughtful, reliable. The other half received almost the same description, except one word was changed. This person is cold, hardworking, thoughtful, reliable. Only one word. Warm versus cold. Later, after meeting the lecturer, students were asked to describe them. The warm group experienced the lecturer as friendly, humorous, approachable. The cold group experienced the same person as strict, distant, unfriendly. Nothing about the lecturer changed. Only the first frame in the students' minds changed. And from that frame, an entire personality was constructed. That is what first impressions do. They do not stay small. They expand. They shape the story we tell ourselves about someone. And once that story begins, it becomes difficult to rewrite. Because human perception is not neutral. It is interpretive. We don't just observe people. We explain them. We assign motives. We guess intentions. And the first explanation often becomes the strongest one. This is why first impressions feel so final. Not because they are always true, but because they become emotionally sticky. Our minds want coherence. We want the world to make sense. So we build a quick judgment, and then we defend it even when new information appears. This is also why first impressions can be unfair. A person who is shy may be labeled as unfriendly. A person who is anxious may be labeled as suspicious. A person who is quiet may be labeled as cold. And once the label forms, the brain begins collecting proof. It notices what confirms the impression and ignores what challenges it. This is how a single moment can echo for weeks, months, even years. Think about how many relationships begin with a feeling, a spark, a discomfort, a sense of ease. Often, we cannot explain it logically. We simply say, I had a good feeling about them, or something felt off. But underneath that feeling is the brain doing what it always does, building a story from limited information. And because that story arrives first, it becomes an emotional starting point. Everything else is compared against it. This is why first impressions matter so much in everyday life, in friendships, in interviews, in dating, in leadership, in any moment where someone is forming an opinion of you. The first impression becomes a shortcut, a mental summary. And once someone has that summary, they tend to filter everything else through it. Even when later information contradicts the first impression, the brain often bends reality to maintain consistency. This is why someone who is seen as confident can be forgiven for being blunt, while someone who is seen as arrogant will be judged for the exact same words. The behavior is identical. The interpretation is not. First impressions create expectations, and expectations create meaning. That is the hidden power of this psychological pattern. And this is why first impressions are so influential in social life. Because humans do not experience each other objectively. We experience each other through emotional frames. Once an impression forms, it quietly guides the entire interaction. It changes what we notice. It changes what we remember. It even changes how we respond. A person you believe is kind will feel kinder. A person you believe is hostile will feel more threatening. Not because they change, but because your mind has already decided what they are. So the question becomes, can we use it wisely? Psychologists suggest that the most effective first impressions are not about perfection, but about emotional clarity. People remember how you made them feel. Warmth matters. Presence matters. Small signals matter. A genuine smile. Eye contact. A calm tone. Listening without rushing. Even something as simple as remembering someone's name can create an immediate sense of respect, because the first impression is not built from grand gestures. It is built from tiny cues. The brain is always scanning. Is this person safe? Is this person interested in me? Is this person trustworthy? And in those first moments, your body language speaks louder than your words. Your face, your posture, your voice, they all communicate before language even begins. This is why the most powerful first impressions are often silent. A relaxed posture can signal openness. A hurried glance can signal disinterest. A warm tone can signal safety. And once the impression is formed, it becomes a psychological doorway through which all future interactions pass. That is why first impressions are precious, not because they cannot be changed, but because they require effort to change. It takes time to undo an early judgment. It takes repeated experiences to rewrite the first story. This teaches us something simple but profound. We are always being interpreted, and we are always interpreting others. So perhaps we should slow down, be more aware, not only of the impression we give, but of the impression we assume. Because sometimes the first story is not the full story. The person we think we understand may be more complex than our first glance allowed. And the greatest social skill may not be creating a perfect first impression, but remaining open enough to let the impression evolve.